So I think the perspective that I'm able to have and the resilience and the thick skin. I mean, I was a high school inner city school teacher. Gang fights I had to separate. I was a teacher during a school shooting. I have so many stories, and I think the resilience that I learned and the thick skin that I have, it takes a lot to phase me.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. I'm really honored to have with me today Jillian Goldberg, Vice President of Marketing and Investor Relations at GuardKnox Cyber Technologies, a world-leading Autotech company and the automotive industry's first Cybertech Tier, where she was also one of the first employees. Originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, she completed her undergraduate work at Tulane University before joining Teach for America as an inner-city high school physics and chemistry teacher. She is a mentor in the flagship program Through Women in Mobility, an expert at Quantum Hub Accelerator, competitive powerlifter and crossfitter, advisor to the Alexander Muss High School in Israel for Entrepreneurship, among others. Jillian Goldberg, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for joining me early in the morning. I really appreciate it. You have such a fascinating journey. If I'm looking today at the traditional journey of somebody who's a vice president of marketing and investor relations at a cybersecurity company, GuardKnox, I would never expect them to be a high school science teacher in Teach for America, and a bunch of other really interesting things. And so what I'd love to focus on in the beginning of our time together is going a little bit through your journey, and I'd love to hear from you. What really pushed you as you were making decisions what to do and when throughout your career, and then get a little bit into the role of VP marketing at a cybersecurity company?
Yeah, of course. So it's kind of funny, my journey here, because I think even 5 years ago, if you would have told me where I'd be today, I would have told you you're crazy. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is like the epitome of middle America. I always tell people, when you think of your average American small town, that's how I grew up. I was a huge soccer player, so sports defined and still defines my entire life, I would say. And I always really, really wanted to be a doctor, actually. I was pre-med. I actually got into medical school. And decided, after working in the children's hospital in Cincinnati every summer of my college experience, that it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I think what I had thought I had fallen in love with was just not what it was. I also think I was absolutely miserable taking pre-med. The medical system works very different in the United States. So it was 4 years of pre-med and organic chemistry. I actually loved it, but I was like, this isn't what I want. So I was very active in college with the bone marrow drive, and wasn't sure. So I actually was contacted by Teach for America to apply. So I said, I don't know if this is what I want. For those of you who don't know, Teach for America is a division of AmeriCorps. They take struggling, low income, failing school districts, essentially. So my students have to meet a certain threshold of what we call free and reduced lunch. So they have to live a certain threshold below the poverty line in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we are brought in for 2 years. We do not have a formal teaching background. We actually get that while we're teaching. And we're brought in for 2 years. Wow. And the idea is, so we stay in education. The motto of Teach for America is that one day each and every student will have access to an equal and equitable education. Wow.
But what, at that point in your life, because, it's one thing being invited to apply to something like this. It's another thing to actually go and do it and then spend time doing it. Where are you at in terms of your thinking through your career? Studying pre-med is not easy. You're spending a lot of time in academia. What brings you, even, intrinsically, to say, I'm going to go for this?
Oh, I always used to say, I wish I had some like amazing thing to say, like, I believe in this. I had the, I've always been very attracted to education. I've always been very attracted to the youth in general. I do completely like buy into the fact that education is the most powerful tool with which to change the world. When one of Gandhi's quotes, and I think that it's really, really. I looked at the way I grew up, and I am very blessed at the life my parents gave me. It's very interesting. During my first training sessions at Teach for America, I really had a guilt actually for the life my parents gave me, and the sacrifices my grandparents obviously had made to give me that life, because I didn't have the same kinds of struggles that a lot of my students and even fellow teachers have. I will say that there was this, an issue of a white savior complex that we used to talk about a lot. So I've been very blessed. I did, as a kid, have a lot of medical challenges. And so I wanted to go into medicine initially because I wanted to give back what I was given. And I realized I didn't have to do that through medicine. And actually what I was is, my students, I was in Texas, so my students were, first generation immigrants. A lot of them would cross the border and be in my class within 24 hours.
Really?
And it was, I taught one period a day. I actually taught in Spanish.
Wow.
So I kind of was like, I am 2 generations removed from y'all, my students' stories. My grandparents, my great grandparents came to the United States with a dream, like so many. And I kind of was sitting here and I said, your kids could have the life I have. So this is, the value of hard work and a dream. I think there's nothing like it.
And so, capturing just a little bit of the experience and working with these children, what did it teach you? That you're taking with you as you're going on throughout your career. Obviously, today you're doing something very, very different, and you're deep into the tech ecosystem here in Israel. But even in your day-to-day life here, what are you taking back from working for Teach for America?
Wow. So I actually think every skill I have that has led me to the professional I am today, I learned from teaching. So, just from the very basic, from a marketing point of view, taking a very complicated concept and really finding a way to make it, to message it to my students, to break it down, to build a campaign, for instance, in marketing is just like building a lesson plan, starting with the end in mind. I think time management, prioritization, stress, like juggling 5,000 things at once. I mean, it's so funny, like the way that I run everything here, everyone laughs and they say, oh, it's so obvious you were a teacher because of like the organization and the way that I kind of juggle. And I also think there's this perspective that teaching gave me that it doesn't matter really, like we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and how stressful work can be, but like this is not life and death. This,
Right.
What I'm doing here in tech, it's amazing, it's changing things, but I don't go to bed at night wondering if my students are going to have enough to eat or what's happening in the homeless shelter. Like that's not a reality for me anymore. So I think the perspective that I'm able to have and the resilience and the thick skin. I mean, I used to, I was a high school inner city school teacher. Gang fights, I had to separate. I was a teacher during a school shooting. I have so many stories, and I think the resilience that I learned and the thick skin that I have, it takes a lot to phase me. And I think that really has been huge. Like being an American in the Israeli tech system, it's this fake it till you make it thing I used to do in teaching that I do here. It's like, I do it every day.
I love it, and we casually even skipped over the fact that you competed in the Ninja Warrior competition in Israel, and so obviously with CrossFit and athleticism, literally a warrior. But Jillian, take me then to your decision to enter the tech ecosystem, both deciding to go into marketing, but also cybersecurity. It's not trivial, especially for somebody who's not brought up in the Israeli ecosystem, which is all about cyber from the get-go.
Yeah. So it's actually it's even more of a nonlinear path. I came to Israel. I got my master's degree at Tel Aviv University in emergency and disaster management. So I actually have a master's of public health. Worked for IsraAid, worked with MADA, was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I thought this was how I was going to continue to give back. I was very interested in education and, some disaster zones and what happens. And I went to one of my professors and I said, listen, can you help me network? And he said, I've been working with you for a year. I know what you're capable of. I'm starting this company and you have to come work with me. And I said, what are you talking about? This is not my path. This isn't what I want. I don't even want to make Aliyah to Israel. I'm just here for my education. And so actually that's the CEO of GuardKnox, Moshe. And he gave me some of the best advice I've ever been given. And it's that my background, my resume, my formal education is a suitcase of skills. And I can take that suitcase with me wherever I go. And I truly, truly believe that. So I looked at GuardKnox. I looked at the market. I looked at the opportunity and I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I cannot give up. And I truly believe that I actually think not coming from that background helped me because I understood what my audience or what my potential clients were thinking, what the mindset they're coming from. I have to teach myself this stuff and it makes me a better teacher. And it makes me a better marketer. And, I don't have the same biases maybe that everyone else has. I have to work harder, maybe at times, but it's not, it's about working smarter, not longer.
Right.
So really and
Now,
so
what is it
that's
about?
been kind of my journey into tech.
Translating something as deep tech as cybersecurity, which maybe not trivial, also to a lot of potential customers that you want to sell to. What did you learn about translating that to language that people would be attracted to, either would easily understand or something that would be even at least compelling to them?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So actually, GuardKnox, we do not define ourselves anymore as a cybersecurity company.
Okay.
When I first joined, we were automotive cybersecurity. Our team comes from the Israeli Air Force, where they actually developed cyber defense systems in our fighter jets and missile defense systems. So we first entered the market and we said, hey, this is an amazing message from defense aviation to automotive, the same technology approach. Let's bring it to automotive. And we started working, and that was a very simplistic message that people could really grasp and go, oh yeah. The regard for the Israeli military is very, big in most places. So that helped. But we quickly realized that our true USP is so much bigger than just cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is kind of that foundation, which actually enables more levels of connectivity. So it got even more technical. We define ourselves as a Cybertech Tier supplier. We actually provide solutions and technologies for the next generation of electronic architecture of vehicles, as well as what's called SOA, services-oriented architecture. I like to call it the smartphoneization of the automotive industry. This idea that we're a platform that you can actually download apps and give yourselves a personalized, customized experience in the vehicle. And so it converts a driver to a subscriber of services. So while cybersecurity is the foundation, it's actually so much more than that. So actually expanding that value proposition and being able to have the outsider perspective and say, hey guys, we're getting these questions. We're doing so much more. We're not just cybersecurity. And how do I message that? So from a marketing perspective, we went through a process of, building a new category, which I don't recommend anyone doing during a pandemic. It was very challenging. It was I think, April we did this of last year. I don't recommend it, but we did it. It worked. And I think some of my experience coming from outside the industry, I was able to kind of see that maybe quicker than everyone else was.
Wow. And walk me through that building a new category phase in your mind. What is sort of your guiding principles as you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, we have to reposition ourselves? Doesn't sound very easy to me.
No, I think a lot of what you have to do is humble yourself. and really kind of say, let's go back to the drawing board. I think it's very challenging for us to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what we're doing in the terms of marketing and messaging. And we spend a lot of times with clients, with partners, asking questions and going, how do you've been working with us. How are you seeing us? What is our true value add to you? We work with an amazing marketing agency who came in and really helped us with that Penguin Strategies. And we also, I spent so much time. I will say the good thing about the pandemic and the lockdown was I had time to just think. And so much of, we get in this meeting craze and I didn't have time to think. So I spent a lot of time with our CEO and just thinking and coming up with this idea. And it originally came from a PR perspective, and we tested it with the media a little bit first, and it caught on. And so then we moved it to the marketing side.
Okay, very, very cool. I think that one of the things that I'm always curious about is, these different transitions, and especially when somebody from outside of the industry comes in and has their unique perspective. I think it sounds really, really interesting. But what I'm really curious about, Jillian, is where does your actual passion lie? So is it in teaching? Is it in rethinking content, in being dynamic in the world? If you look at yourself, and your future career as well, who's Jillian really?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, we ask ourselves that all the time. I really do think my passion, I obviously education is a lot of my passion. Technology is my passion. But what that kind of boils down to, what that common denominator is the future. And really, how do we leave an impact and a change? And so I think, that's where my passion lies, is really, it seems so cliche, but really changing that. I've been really honored to kind of be a part of the Alexander Muss High School in Israel, which has now just launched an entrepreneurship program. So I got to merge my passion of education with entrepreneurship. And for the first time since I think they said 1972, the Jewish National Fund has a way to engage students in Israel that's not just history and religion. And I think specifically in today's age, how do we engage people in Israel that's not that is fit for the new age.
Right.
Not that those other things aren't important, but really, how do we connect with people? And that to me is where my passion is, and my feet, I don't know where I'm going to be. But I know that who I am. So
very, very
that's
cool.
kind of where.
I love it. And I'm going to continue on this path for the last few minutes that we have. And I want to take you back again to childhood, Cincinnati, Ohio. What really fascinates you growing up? So you mentioned that you're big into sports, very curious. You want to be a doctor, but middle school. What really gets you going inside?
So in middle school, wow. God, I never want to think about those years again, right? But in middle school, I was very, very, my life was soccer. I didn't know there was a life outside of that, but I would say medicine. I was very driven by medicine. And being a soccer player, and that was also kind of a part of it. But I was always super intrigued by medicine and changing things and everything like that. That was, defined my middle school years for sure.
And if you look today at your work or where you're headed, what really inspires you on a day-to-day basis?
What inspires me is actually the youth. And that sounds kind of funny because, working in mobility, but the idea that we're changing things for, I don't have children yet, but we're changing things for my children and our children and the next generation. And this idea that we're actually leaving something better than what we were given. And it's funny, I was listening to the news on the way to the office today, and it was just talking about these record temperatures we're having in the States right now. And I was just thinking, what are we doing to change this? And I think that's really what gets me up in the morning, is I actually feel at GuardKnox that I am changing the mobility industry. And if you think of the mobility industry, it's such a fundamental industry that is, moving us around the world. So we really need to, I feel like I'm doing something to change that. And that's what gets me up in the morning.
Wow, I love it. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
I'd like to describe myself as positive. I do think I'm an incredibly positive human being. I'm very ambitious and I'm incredibly driven. And I think those things definitely come from the sports background too.
Positive, ambitious, and driven. Jillian, thank you so much for sharing this time with me. I really appreciate it. I think that this nonlinear career pathway, it's incredible, and I'm inspired every time I hear about people following their heart and following their passion, and especially understanding the greater picture of what they do and why they do it, which I think is just very, very big, in your life and in your journey. So thank you for sharing that with me, and best of luck with the rest of the career, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.